Okay, so what we're working on in this section is rewriting equations and formulas. First of all, let's get the highlighter. We need to know what a literal equation is. And a literal equation is an equation with several variables. So you're not just going to have one, you're going to have multiple variables. To solve literal equations, you do inverse operations. So to get rid of a plus, you minus. To get rid of a minus, you plus. Get rid of a times, you divide. And get rid of a divide, you times. So you're going to do the inverse operations like we've been doing with equations. And you're going to combine like terms when possible. One thing that makes literal equations so difficult is that there's not a lot of like terms and there's just variables and it gets confusing. But remember, apples go with apples, oranges go with oranges. And so you set them in like groups, and if you can combine them, you can. If you can't combine them, then you just write them again. Okay? All right, so let's look at this first example. For this first example, I got to solve for y, so I'm going to highlight what I'm solving for. Now I treat this just like an equation. I need to get rid of the 4x and the 2, but I get rid of what's farthest away, so I'm going to minus a 4x. Now I cannot put an 8 with a 4x, so I usually write it to the side so that I don't accidentally put them together. And so now I have 2y is equal to 8 minus 4x. Now I still have to get y by itself, and remember a 2 is touching it, so that actually means times. So to get rid of a times 2, I'm going to divide. Now you have two options. You can do a big divide or a little divide. I usually will do two little divides, so I remember to reduce both fractions. And so now 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. So y is equal to 4 minus 2x. So it's the same operations, but what gets a little tricky is knowing when things can go together or not. All right, let's look at this next one. I'm going to highlight again what I'm looking for. For this one, I'm solving for b. Okay, and so I need to get rid of this 2a because it's farther away from the b. So I'm minus 2a. Well, look, I have a 3a here, so I can actually put the 2a with the 3a because they're like terms. So now I get BC is equal to 1A. And my goal is to get B by itself. So that means I need to get rid of this times C. So I'm going to divide both sides by C. And the C on the left crosses off. But now I'm left with 1A, which is just 1 times A, which is just A. So B is equal to A over C. And that's the answer. All right, we're going to skip this next example for a little bit, and what I want you to do is I want you to try and solve number 1 and number 2. For number 1, I will tell you there's a hint. I would go ahead and take care of this 2 by distributing it first. So I'm going to help you with this first step. So I'm going to distribute first because it's going to make it a little easier. So I get 2x plus 2y is equal to x minus 5, and you're solving for y. So see if you can figure out what you have to do to get that variable alone. Once you think you have it, go ahead and press play. Okay, so you should have gotten rid of the 2x on both sides, and then x can go with x, so I'll put it there. And so I have 2y is equal to, well, there's a 1 in front of that one, so 1 minus 2x is negative 1x. And now I have to get rid of this times 2. So I divide each thing by 2. And so y is equal to negative 1/2 x minus 5 over 2. You do not have to make them mixed numbers. Improper fractions are actually pretty good when you have problems that look like this, multivariable problems. Okay, number 2, see if you can figure out what your first step is. Again, you're solving for x. So think about if you would get rid of the z or the y first. And what might help you is if I wrote a problem like this, what would you guys get rid of first? Would you get rid of this plus 2 or this divide by 5 first? Yeah, that's right. You will get rid of the divide by 5 first. Okay? So try that process on number 2. And when you think you have it, press play. All right, so what you should have done was getting rid of that big divide. So I'm going to multiply by y on both sides. And so I get wy is equal to x plus z. Well, I'm trying to get x by itself, so now I just have to get rid of a plus z, so I minus it. I can't put it with that, so I'm going to just throw it in front. You can squeeze it over at the end, it doesn't matter also. And so I have negative z plus wy is equal to x. Or you could say wy minus z is equal to x. Both of those are the same answer. Okay. All right, number 3, I would like you to try on your own. You are trying to solve for y. So see what you could do to solve for that, and then when you think you have it, go ahead and press play so you can check your work. Okay, so you should have said, well, I got to get rid of this 5 first. I'm going to minus 5, and 5's a number, so it can go with my other number. And so now I have 3y, because the 5's are gone, is equal to x plus 7. And now I have to get rid of this times 3, so I'm going to divide both sides by 3, meaning everything by 3. So now I get x over 3 plus 7 over 3, and that's it. Okay? 4 is a little trickier. We're going to get that from this example up above. So when we look at this example, this one's hard. And the reason this one's harder is because, look, I have to solve for x, and I have x 2 times. But I can't put those two things together. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the backwards distributive property, which is factoring. I have an x in both of these, so I'm going to take the x out. And when I take the x out, they're kind of gone. And so what's left is left with 2z plus 3. And then I bring down the 5y plus 2. And the reason that works is, watch, if I write the problem that I just got down, if I multiply by x, I get 2xz plus 3x, which is what I had. So I highlighted what I had in both, and I took it outside, which meant it went away. So now my goal is to get x by itself. So now I have to get rid of this times 2z plus 3. Well, the way to get rid of a times is you divide. And that's the answer. X is equal to 5y plus 2 over 2z plus 3. Be careful with this step right here. Some of you will want to distribute, but if you distribute, you're going to get back to where you were. You have to recognize that x is outside, so I got to get rid of this parentheses, and I'm going to get rid of that parentheses by dividing. All right, let's look at the last problem. If you guys want to try number 4, same process as what we just did, and when you think you're ready, or if you want to check your progress, go ahead and press play. So hopefully you highlighted that there's y's in both things. So that means I need to take a y out. And when I take a y out, they're gone. So now I'm left with x minus 4 is equal to 2x plus z. Remember, I don't want to distribute, because if I distribute, I'm going to go back to where I was. So I need to get rid of a times y, or a times x minus 4, by dividing by x minus 4. And so y is just 2x plus z divided by x minus 4. Okay, so don't get overwhelmed with these literal equations. They are confusing because there's so many letters, but really you're not that often going to be combining things, so it actually makes it easier. Just have to remember that you have to use the inverse operation.